Architect Ruturaj Puranik, Principal Architect at Chaukhat Design Studio. It's a firm established in Vadodara 4 years ago. So it's been like I would just brief about my journey in brief, in a bit. So I have been working in different firms in Vadodara, Ahmedabad, and Mumbai to take a different kind of experience and different scales of experience that I could. And then I started my own Chaukhat. So it's a multidisciplinary firm which experiments with architecture, interior design, production design, corporate healthcare, and different kind of projects that we come across while designing. So every 3 or 6 months there is like a dif- different kind of a project coming in. Luckily, so we have been experimenting with that along with keeping the principles of design in common. The three pillars will be simplicity, style, and elegance. So that's about Chaukhat Design Studio. You can check out our work. So basically, there is a like famous saying in Gujarati which is called "Morna Inda Chitarwa Na Pade." So it was something like that with me. My dad was in a creative field, and he was काफी artistic. So that came into inheritance, and I was always interested in art and creativity from my childhood. But then came a time where I had to choose between art and technical parts, basically art and engineering. And so the architecture was middle way, which balances art and architecture. So I had to choose the middle way where I can balance and basically bring the dreams to the reality. So that is the basically the inspiration story of that. Nothing fancy, but that's it. I think it's not just an accessory. It is definitely something which is like a uh, add-on. It is an add-on. Sometimes it is very subjective, I would say, because every project would demand a different process. So sometimes it can be an add-on to a place where the space is not designed well, or there are some constraints which is not making a designer do some experiment with that corner of the house or the project. So sometimes an art installation would solve the purpose. Sometimes it is also a piece which is like reimagined and imagined to and fro while designing the space, like a passage which ends to a blank wall where we can have a nice piece of art which accentuates the whole space and adds some value to the space. But I also believe that it is like a cherry on the cake if we talk about art and architecture, because if the cake is not made well, then cherry will not serve the purpose. So one needs to design the space well, then you can add the cherry, which is the art. So yeah, it definitely serves that purpose of adding more value to a space and more life to a space, like art, plants, and these are some things which can do better to spaces and add more liveliness to the space, and also some character basically. Sometimes like the owners of the place or the end users have a very different kind of a philosophy or taste towards something, and that needs to be respected and reflected from the space that they have. I would say it was one of my initial projects where we designed the space with a very limited budget. It was a family for four. My basically the couple who gave us the project lived in the US. They had very apt brief of keeping things minimal, keeping things non-cluttered, easy to maintain, and using the structural members or the maybe we can call it the mistakes or the errors of the house to be concealed through very minimal kind of a paneling or textures or something like that. So in that project, we basically went for a customized artwork back wall for dining. So they wanted to do an interesting dining wall. They didn't have any briefs about the living or the bedrooms, but ड- उनका ऐसा था कि डाइनिंग तो हमें कुछ करना है डाइनिंग में. So because that's a space where the family comes together all the time and they have food together, you have conversations, so that space needs to be well planned and well, basically it should have that character. So we went with a customized set of 6 ceramic plates with the favorite food dishes of every member of the house, connected by a monoliner artwork. So basically, it was 6 plates unified by an artwork. So basically, 6 members of the family combining together at the dining and having that element of character and element and character of the art through that. So it was something like that which got really good amount of credits and praise from everyone that we posted to, and it also got published in some of the e publications. So that was about that. But we have been doing it whenever and wherever we can give it a shot. Sometimes clients are very cooperative about it. Sometimes they feel that it's kind of a luxury. So that goes on and on. I think budget is something that needs to be seen as a challenge and not as a constraint, because I feel budget is going to be very subjective towards each client that comes with, and they have a different kind of expense ratio towards the income that they have. Someone very rich cannot spend on things like art, and someone who is like earning, like maybe from a middle class family, can earn less but still spend more on art. So it is also about the art education of a person and exposure towards it, how art makes him or her feel about the space or the pieces that they have installed. So it is also about that. So we have been trying in, like, also trying the project that we basically told you about. It was also a very limited budget project, but we were able to do some or the other art pieces at some of the walls of the house, so that the value gets added and not the cost. Like basically a balance between the cost and value part of the design. So I think some or the other, we some way or the other we can definitely balance it out and not just basically impose it, but discuss and curate it well, so that their budget is also considered, our design is also considered, and the space looks complete. Definitely it does. I feel it is something that basically, as I said, it is like art adds value to a space. So it is also something about the character of the company or the end user or the family that is living in. So any space that has art or you want to install art for has to be thought in terms of the end user and uh, not the designer, or not the basically maybe the value of art or things like that. That is my personal preference, but I would say because the resonance of that person should be there with any piece of art that is installed in that space. So if it is like very brutalist, then something very lively can do the balance with the same, and so on so forth. So basically it can either complement with the space that is going on, the theme that is going on, the palette that is going on, or it can also add some contrast to a very boring corner of the house, or maybe something like a dead wall which is happening like without any constants or without any solutions possible. So sometimes you need to figure out what goes well with what in terms of also the palette and the character of the people that are going to use it eventually. I think my previous answer pretty much encompasses this, but it is more of I would if I like see it as pointers, then it is majorly the color palette, material palette, the budget, definitely the taste of the end user that is going to use the space, and also the some parts of the philosophy that the person has needs to be aligned with the art, so that anything that we propose or we suggest them needs to get aligned with their vision of things or their life or their journey. Then it is easier for them to digest or basically get convinced about some things that we are proposing. So I think we also need to understand the nature and philosophy and journey of that person, how he wants to live his life further, and that are some things that maybe always adds to the dialogue of selection of anything that is going into a space. I was like very much interested into art, so I have never been on the opposite side. Even my final year thesis was about art, making an art center for everyone who like from performing arts to visual arts and everything combined, learning and producing art, appreciating art. So I have been on always on the pro side of using art as a not as a accessory but as a element of design maybe. But basically, we went across recently. We did a project that it was just a small balcony project. It was not a small balcony; it was a huge balcony, but it was just a balcony that we had to redesign. So it was like 7 feet wide and 50 feet length balcony that we had to design. So we had some existing elements which the client told us not to break because it was already heavily invested upon, and we had to figure out some ways to basically accentuate the same. So while doing the lighting layout and the basically the overall furniture layout of the space, and the we definitely identify some backdrops that need to be taken care of. So we identified a blank wall was which was there at their balcony, which had to be accentuated into a feature wall. So while conceptualizing, we collaborated with an artist and also an architect. So she's a friend of mine. We collaborated with her, and basically we converted and balanced a piece of art in a way that it had layers of lighting, it had layers of art, and had layers of existing wall that was behind. So it was basically um, a flock of birds which depicted the client's necessity to basically show freedom. Uh, so we did that artwork in that direction, and basically we added a light, single light, which dropped on the wall like depicting the sun. So it was something like a picture which gets converted into like the silhouette of flock of birds going back home while the sunset is there. So it had layers of different elements which added to the whole composition. But that also got a lot of credits and lot of praise from the clients. They really appreciated. Anyone new coming to their home always appreciates. Oh, ये बहुत अच्छा सोचा है, कैसे सोचा है ये वो. But it went through a very convincing journey and strugglesome journey in the initial time, but it went really well when it got executed. So yeah, that there are some things that you need to basically trust people upon. Not just your philosophy or not just client's philosophy will always work out, I feel. You need to basically जो जिसका काम है उसको वो करने दो, बेसिकली वो हम जो बात करते हैं, दैट इज़ द थिंग दैट वी से ऑल द टाइम कि जो जिसका एक्सपर्ट है उसको उसका काम करने दो, सब में माइक्रो मैनेज मत करो. 99% गेट सॉल्व आफ्टर यू कीप ट्रस्ट ऑन समवन. सो या, दैट्स अबाउट इट. Awareness about it, definitely yes. I feel art is also like um, depicted as luxury in a lot of projects. It is definitely a luxury after a point. I would not deny that fact, but it needs to have like even the client side, the designer side, the artist side, all need to be get like all need to get in sync with each other to basically have that awareness of each other. If one of the three doesn't respect another and tries to impose something or things like that, then it becomes a very tough scenario for the other two to handle. So definitely there needs to be more awareness about understanding art, uh, appreciating art, because as the famous saying goes, the world will be meh without art. So I definitely believe that. And but a lot of people treat it, or maybe they are not exposed to art from their childhood, and that is the reason that they get very mechanical after a point, and they realize that, but it's too late for them to like maybe change that wiring. But definitely I feel if it is talked more about, then things can change. And about the fraternity or the community part, I would always say there are initiatives or there are forums where this needs to be addressed and talked more upon. So I'm also working on one of the communities that I'm developing where we can collaborate with artists, architects, interior designers, photographers, everyone that is going in a project. So every professional that goes into a project needs to be well talked with, well understood, and then only it's possible to have that complete harmony and balance of things, and a project can do maybe like 50% better than what it was. So I think the perfect sync happening between everyone and the perfect amount of respect that everyone deserves needs to be given. May it be a designer or an artist or an engineer, everyone needs to like get in sync and respect each other's work and trust each other's work. Then I think there are like almost 0% probability of things getting haywire or maybe not good or not fantastic, I would say. So yeah, that is more about that. And I think the educational institutions and the schools also need to give certain amount of freedom for such subjects and some weightage to these, that the creative part of any student is basically identified and well nurtured with, so that they also from their childhood, when we have a very fresh mind, very blank kind of a canvas, then it can get painted really well, I would say. But after a point, if it is too much filled with a lot of things, then there is no room left. So I think that also needs to be um, promoted and basically given that freedom enough to think about that.